everyone to the Niagara Parents Premature Babies panel. We'll begin today with a quick land acknowledgement. As we take a moment today to reflect upon the importance of the land on which we gather, our provider and sustainer, we look to understand the history of the land. Niagara region is situated on treaty land. These lands are steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattawandurunk, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations. Intended to guide the relationship between the First Nations and Europeans, the two-row wampum is an important symbol of everlasting equality, peace, and friendship. It remains the foundation upon which Canada was built, and we recognize that this mutually respectful relationship between nations is essential for reconciliation today. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara stands with all Indigenous peoples, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. We recognize that we must do more to learn about the history and current situation of Indigenous peoples. This will help us better understand our roles and responsibilities towards reconciliation as treaty people, residents, and caretakers. Before we get started, we would like to let our viewers know that stories shared in today's conversation will touch upon the struggles, challenges, and emotions of being a parent to a premature baby. The content may be sensitive to those watching, so we just remind you all to please reach out to Niagara Parents for support or a healthcare professional. Without further ado, let's get into it. So today we have with us Fabiana, Elizabeth, and Addie, all here to talk on our premature baby panel. We will start by introducing Fabiana, who is the director at the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation, also known as CPBF. Not only is she a preemie mom herself, but she comes today to share her knowledge, story, and what supports are available through the foundation. So I'll pass it over to you, Fabiana.
So thank you so much, Andrea, for inviting me to be here today to share a little bit of my story and the work of the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation. It is a special day indeed. It's the World Prematurity Day, so I'm very happy to be here today.
We are so happy to have you today. So we are hoping you can share a little bit about your story, what got you interested in starting this foundation and being involved in this foundation, and what CPBF really stands for and what it means.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I am a preemie mom. My surviving twin was born at 26 weeks gestation 10 years ago. It's hard to believe it, that all this time has passed. And sometimes it just feels like it was yesterday. So Gabriel, I spent 5 months in the ICU in Mount Sinai Hospital in Toronto. And he had a very rough journey in the ICU. He had several infections. He had ROP that has to be treated. He was on ventilator for 7 weeks. And when finally the time for discharge came, he still came home on oxygen. So he was on oxygen for another year at home. And later he was diagnosed with quadriplegia cerebral palsy. So our journey never really ended. But looking back now, I think even for families who didn't have such a diagnosis, the journey never really ended because it always stays with us. But when we were in the ICU, I was involved in the Family Integrated Care, the FICARE research study, which is a model of care that fully involved parents in the care of their babies. And we really feel that we are part of the team. We have education sessions every day and peer support. And I became very empowered and I started to advocate for my son. And I didn't realize back then the impact that being part of that study had in my life. So I was very grateful for being in his care and so involved in his care that I knew I had to give back to this community. So I started volunteering at Mount Sinai Hospital a year after he was discharged. Really out of gratitude. I was truly grateful for that team that saved his life and took care of us as a family. They didn't see us as like just take care of the baby, but really took care of us as a unit, which was very important. And when we were there, I had peer support. And for me, it was so important to know that somebody had walked on those shoes that I want to have that same role. So at Sinai, I started as a peer support. I was a parent advisor, and I became very involved in research, and I became an ambassador for FICARE. So I traveled a team across Canada, North America, and some other countries to really disseminate that model of care that I really fell in love. That why not all parents have the opportunity to be involved in the baby's care and learn about your baby when you are in the NICU, because it's the beginning of your journey as parents, or even if you're a second time parent or third time parent, being in ICU is very unique. So you really need to learn how to parent through the plexiglass and what it means to have your baby hooked to different machines. So doing the work with the FICARE team, I learned about CPBF. CPBF already existed. And I fell in love with the work of the foundation. I really felt the passion of people working at the foundation. And I joined the board, and a year later, I was invited to become the executive director. So it's been 4 years now. Which is
Incredible.
it's a very exciting organization, and was started by a Preemie parent from Edmonton. She really saw the gap in the system for supporting parents and become a voice of the parents. So from the beginning, CPBF involved all stakeholders across Canada to really become advocates and provide education and support for families. So this is who we are. We are a parent-led, we're a charitable organization, and our mission is truly to support and educate families so they can feel empowered to care for their babies. Obviously, in November, in the whole year, we raise awareness about prematurity, specifically November 17th, which is the World Prematurity Day. And we advocate for families across Canada. In our first advocacy piece was really to have the extended parental leave, which was such a bonus for our families. And we do many other advocacy work and awareness campaigns around breastfeeding, kangaroo care, all the important things to help the babies thrive and the families really to thrive once the baby comes home. And we also collaborate a lot of research in Canada and international. So this is a little bit of us, is a snapshot.
It's very all-encompassing. You guys touch on so many different things to support any parent with a premature baby. So I was hoping maybe you could let our viewers know about some of, or I guess all of the free services that you provide, or maybe a few of your personal favorites or that you found the most helpful.
Yeah, so this is very important for us. To everything that we provide to families is free, so is everybody can have access to it. And I think COVID really helped us to gain a larger community across Canada when people could not have access to some programs, but now because everything is virtual, they have access. So it is very important for us to have that free services, whatever we do for families. So my favorite program is really the parent care program. We know the impact of having a preterm baby on parents' mental health. And this is something CPBF always wants to do, is to provide mental health support for families. And COVID really helped us to get this program up and going in 4 weeks, which was a record time to create a program.
Wow.
So we provide 4 free therapy sessions for families who are currently in the ICU up to 3 years post-discharge, or for families who experience a loss and they want to get pregnant again, because we know it's a lot of anxiety on that pregnancy. So we hire clinicians. We collaborate with clinicians from across Canada. They are all perinatal mental health specialists to work with families from different provinces. And it's a free referral program. Families can go on our website, sign up, and then they'll be matched with a clinician from their province. And they can benefit from those sessions. And for us, we feel that is a great success. Only in 2022, we have served over 100 families, and it's November. And for us, it's great to see the demand for this kind of services. And also with the mental health crisis, because of COVID exacerbated, And clinicians are very busy. It takes a long time to get a referral to community services sometimes. So I think this is a program that is very near to our hearts at CPBF, and we put a lot of effort, and we are very happy to see that many families have benefited from it. And I think one important thing is this is not a crisis line. And this is an important thing to point it out. So if families do come in crisis, the clinicians are able to make referrals for the community or call 911 or go to the nearest hospital. We are not there for a crisis line. It's just really to give families some strategies to cope with whatever they are coping and help them to sometimes really see the light at the end of the tunnel, because sometimes we're really blindsided with our journeys.
A great coping mechanism as well is just not feeling so alone all the time. So I remember you had spoken to us a little bit about your peer support drop-in session. Would you mind elaborating a little bit about what this looks like or how a parent might be able to join?
Yeah, so peer support, research has shown over and over again the power of peer support, what peer support does for families, in any situation, right? And for us, it means hope and help us to build resilience. Knowing that a parent made through the other side after the NICU, it's very, very important. It was very important for me to know that somebody had walked on my shoes, and this is one of the pillars of CPBF, to have that peer support. So we have one Facebook group that we have almost 3,000 families from across the country. We do not provide medical advice, but it's a place for families to connect, to share resources, to share their stories, to celebrate their milestones, and sometimes their heartbreaks, sometimes how they feel anxious and they don't feel that they are doing a good job as a parent and they don't know their place. They share their struggles, and we are just there to listen to one another and say, I've been there. This is what helped me. And sometimes it's just to be there to listen, right? Because not always you are looking for a solution. Sometimes it's just on a shoulder that you can cry on and people will get it, right? If your baby gained 1 gram, or if your baby came off CPAP, only preemie parents know the importance of those milestones, right? It's very hard to share with our extended families or best friends. Oh my God, my baby came off CPAP. They have no clue what it is, and sometimes they don't even know what CPAP is. So having that parent celebrating with you, that is very important. So the group is moderated by trained peer mentors. If sometimes there is a red flag, we talk to one another. We know how to deal with certain situations, but the group is very safe. Families feel very safe, and we really love the group. And we have another group that also we started because of COVID, the weekly peer support group. People can just drop in. It's once a week on Thursdays. People can come, and they come from different times in their journey. Sometimes they are in the queue, sometimes they are year out, sometimes they are home with the baby on a parental leave. So it's very nice to know their parents are there for you. We just can come in. There's not a big commitment that you have to be there every single week. So it's nice. And sometimes the group is very small. Sometimes the group is a little bigger. And the facilitator is a mom of 2 preemies. And she's also a perinatal mental health specialist, which is like a double bonus for the family.
That's incredible.
To the group. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing about that. It's a great way for people to feel connected and not so alone. And like you said, celebrate the milestones. We're so happy to have you here today to just celebrate World Prematurity Day. So I guess we'll end it off with you just kind of talking about how people can get involved with World Prematurity Day, either within Niagara or just kind of across the world, I guess. With social media, we have that option.
Yes, and we love to see a lot of social media, campaigns going on, families sharing pictures. Obviously, purple is our color, is a color that was chosen for World Prematurity Day. There are over 100 countries celebrating World Prematurity Day today, raising awareness on the short and long-term impact of preterm birth, and what can we do together as a global community to really improve outcomes for the babies. So purple is the color. We encourage people to wear purple tonight, and many landmarks across the world will be lit up in purple to mark the day. In Niagara region, we have Niagara Falls, which is we are very proud to have Niagara Falls because it's the only landmark that people worldwide knows about Canada. So to have those 15 minutes lit up in purple for our preemie babies is very special for us. But it's beautiful to see on social media landmarks from across the country. Families love to go and share the pictures and tag CPBF, which is at Canadian Preemies, and hashtag World Prematurity Day or Preemie Power Canada. And there's millions of people worldwide really marking the day, and it became a bigger event. So it's been 12 years now the World Prematurity Day exists, and as I said, over 100 countries are really engaged on the campaign. And this year campaigns is around skin to skin. We're obviously encouraging everyone to do skin to skin from the moment of birth for better outcomes for the babies and the families.
Awesome. So every viewer here, go check out the Niagara Falls at 10:30 tonight to support World Prematurity Day. Take a photo, tag CPBF, and also Niagara parents. We'll share all of your stories and share some support for the whole World Prematurity Day initiative. Thank you so much, Fabiana, for sharing a little bit about your story and all of the services that you have to offer. I'm now going to introduce our two incredible panelists here today. So we have Elizabeth and Addie here today, who are two courageous preemie moms who are going to share a little bit about their stories and how they really benefited from CPBF services. So I'll pass it over to Elizabeth to share a little bit about her story.
Oh, thank you. So I'm Elizabeth. I'm a mom to 3 preemies. They were all born about 3 years apart and all born exactly 6 weeks early. So today I was just hoping to take you on a little journey of my experiences with raising them and how all their NICU journeys were so unique and different with different challenges, like Fabiana was saying. So my first son is now 7. He was born in 2015. He weighed 3 pounds. He stayed in the NICU for about 2 weeks. He loved to eat, so although he started out tiny, he caught up pretty quickly. So when I think back to his NICU experience, it was kind of surreal and very new to me because not only was I becoming a parent for the first time, but I was also now the parent of a preemie. And although it was hard and challenging, I feel as if in that moment I was just kind of naive to the whole situation. I just kind of thought it was a weird variation of normal. And it wasn't kind of until years later when I recognized the trauma and hardships we went through as a family with having a baby in the NICU, and also how prematurity can affect a child well beyond the baby stage. At the time, I didn't know of the Canadian Premature Babies situation, or foundation, excuse me. And so navigating the first few years of his life was kind of difficult. We struggled to understand his unique needs. He was and still is a highly sensitive child with some sensory challenges. So I feel if in that moment it would have been easier on us if we had a support group just to help us through it, give us strategies, tips, even just words of encouragement, that it does get better. And I found that out 3 years later. My daughter was born in 2018. She was also premature. She was my biggest baby, but she was only 4 pounds. So by this time I was well aware of the NICU and I knew what was ahead of us. Her birth and NICU experience was a little bit more challenging because now I had a toddler at home and her NICU stay was a bit longer as well. So I found I was kind of comparing the two NICU experiences, which really isn't helpful because they're each so different. And she stayed longer. She had some jaundice, so she was very sleepy and just didn't have the energy to kind of wake up and eat. So it was easy to become impatient and kind of frustrated with the NICU experience. And I would think things like, why isn't she taking the bottle yet? Or why is she so sleepy? What am I doing wrong? because it wasn't like this with my son's NICU experience. So it was kind of hard to also split the time, right, between home and the NICU, because now I had two kids, and it was almost like I felt like I had to choose one or the other based on the day. And that was really, really tough as a parent. So that really took a toll on me. And still at the time, back in 2018, I wasn't aware of the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation, and I didn't know of the support group. So I feel I just kind of bottled up those feelings and packed them away. And they did kind of resurface with my third and final preemie last year. So, and the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation has really kind of become my place to go to with a lot of these concerns and anxieties, especially with being the mother of premature babies. So we know that the effects stay with you for the rest of your life when you're born premature. So I do still have questions about their development, and it's really helpful and comforting to hear about stories from other parents and their preemies, and especially ones in similar situations as mine. And I especially love to see how they excel as children, teenagers, and even adults. I know on the Facebook group, sometimes you'll have adults post on there and say, I was a 25 weeker and look at me now. And that's really nice to see. So those were my first two experiences, and that kind of brings us to my third baby. He was my second son, and definitely the tiniest. He was born June 2021, and he was 2.8 pounds. So he's little. He's still little, but he's 16 months old now. So his journey was a bit different because there was complications from the very beginning of the pregnancy. So he was severely growth restricted. So I remember when he was born, I didn't even get to see him. So I was in the postpartum recovery room, and I remember saying to my husband, can you go take a picture? Because I don't even know what he looks like. So just then and there, the experience was so different than my first two babies. So it's kind of started off like that. But I did kind of know what to expect with the NICU because I had gone through it twice before, but it was such a different experience altogether. So he was shipped out to McMaster, and he was in the NICU altogether for about 5 weeks. So that was hard on our family members, especially my other two kids who didn't get to meet him for that entire duration because of the pandemic. They weren't able to visit. So that was kind of hard on them as well. But eventually when he was discharged, it was of course very happy for our family and a very nice moment. But I feel like it can be a common thought for some people to think that once you leave the NICU, the baby's perfect, their challenges disappear. And it's just not the case. And preemie parents will be the first to tell you that. So that's kind of when I found the support of the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation. And it's really become quite a great place for me to go to, especially with my third baby. He was just so much smaller and fragile, and he was just different than his brother and sister. So I found, even though I had been through it before, I still had lots of questions and concerns about his health, especially with his growth and development. And family and friends, of course, were there. And although their intentions were, positive and nice, sometimes their advice wasn't always helpful, right? Because they would say things like, don't worry, he's doing fine, he'll catch up. But those comments never really helped because I did have real concerns, and he was eventually diagnosed with that failure to thrive, which, as a parent, it's hard to hear that because the diagnosis itself contains the word failure, which makes parents feel like, oh, they've once again failed the child. So I remember though, when I heard that from the doctor, I immediately thought of the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation Facebook group because I knew that'd be the perfect place for me to go to after hearing that diagnosis. So I logged in on my phone and put a picture of him up there and said, this is what we've been dealt with. What worked for you? Have you experienced this before? And what followed was just a series of comments from parents who had been there but themselves, and lots of them had tips to help with growth and feeding. Others just shared like a snippet of their own child's journey, and a few just said, "I'm sending a hug," and that in itself is nice to hear. So really made a big difference and took away kind of the sting of hearing that awful diagnosis. So I've used the group to ask lots of questions since then as well. Things about like taking iron and special bottles for preemie babies, starting solids. So things that may be common to parents of full-term babies, but with a different spin on it. So a lot of parents, they're really helpful with sending tips and strategies, and there's never any judgment, I feel. So that's, again, really nice to see. And I don't just feel like an anxious preemie mom when I'm logging into the group and posting my concerns, because it can make you feel vulnerable when you're sharing things like that. So
sometimes all you need is that virtual hug and someone
yes,
to resonate with you and say, hey, I feel what you're going through and it's okay.
Yeah. And they'll say that. They'll say, I'm just sending lots of hugs, and you kind of feel like you're getting a hug virtually. So that's kind of nice.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I know it takes a lot to come out and share something so personal. So we really are so grateful for you today. And we're also so happy that you were able to benefit so much from all of the different services offered. Mm-hmm. So thank you once again. And we do want to let all of our viewers know that all of these services, once again, are free, and we'll have a link in the caption of this video for you to look into it a little bit further. But before you do, we are going to pass it over to our final preemie mom, Addie. Addie's going to share a little bit about her personal story. So we'll just pass it over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm Addie. I'm also a preemie mom of one. I had my daughter also in June of 2021. So she's also a 16-month-old. So Elizabeth, I'm right there with you. And she was born 9 weeks early. So I was 31 weeks along in my pregnancy when she was born. And when you talked earlier about the blindside nature of a NICU experience, that was exactly how I felt. I had what I believed to be a completely healthy pregnancy. It was my first pregnancy, so I didn't really have much to compare it to, but all of my prenatal care was very normal. All the tests came back normal. I had no concerns. My medical team had no concerns the whole way along. And actually saw my OB the day before I landed in the hospital with contractions. So it was very strange to me. It was nothing that I was expecting. I didn't even know at the time that I was going into premature labor. I didn't know that what I was experiencing were contractions. I just knew something was wrong, and something was uncomfortable. So me being very anxious, went to the hospital anyways. Worked out in my favor this time because I was already 2 centimeters dilated. So when I heard that from the doctor, obviously initial shock and then fear came over me. And I remember just looking at my husband and just instant tears. And I just said, like, no, it's too soon. I was very scared. So I was immediately admitted to the hospital in the labor and delivery ward and moved into my delivery room. And like when you go through this type of experience, especially when it's something that you weren't necessarily anticipating, I mean, sometimes there can be concerns leading up to it where this might be a potential outcome. But for me, there was no warning signs. So I was totally blindsided. Ended up being in the hospital for about 4 days. And it was a whole rigmarole trying to stop my body from continuing in the process. So they were giving me, like, to be honest, I couldn't even tell you all of the different things that were going in my IV. Like, I think I was in a state of delirium. I do know that they immediately gave me a steroid injection that was intended to help my baby's lungs really quickly develop. So that's something that they do if they have time to really ramp up those lungs and get them ready for the outside. They were also giving me like antibiotics. They were giving me a medication that is used to try and stall the contractions. But they can only do these things for so long. So eventually they had to stop that medication and let my body just do its natural thing. So I gave birth to her I went in on the Wednesday, gave birth on the Saturday. And I think what I thought I was going to experience in that moment was just totally different than what I really experienced. I'd never had a baby before, so I had all of these like preconceived notions of what I was going to feel and what that moment was going to be like, and it ended up just being so different. And I didn't have a lot of time to mentally prepare for that. I mean, this was like a whirlwind experience plus exhaustion. So I kind of had like almost a disassociative moment when she was born. I didn't know whether to be happy or sad. And that was a really strange, like, two emotions to feel when you just brought a life into the world. So it was really strange. I didn't get a lot of time with her. I held her on my chest for about 60 seconds, and then they whisked her off to the medical team that was waiting for her on the other side of the doors. So she was taken away. I was brought to my recovery area, and like Elizabeth, I wasn't able to go and see her myself. So I gave the nurse my phone actually, and she went over to the NICU and took some photos for me and brought them back. And the first photos that I saw of her though were quite graphic. She was in like, it looked like a little plastic bag because they couldn't dress her yet, but they had to do something to keep her body temperature contained. So they actually put her in plastic. And she had all these tubes and wires, and she had, you know, like a mask on, and I couldn't really see her whole face. Her eyes were covered with, I think it was to protect her eyes from the light of the light that helps with the jaundice. So I really couldn't see her face at all. She was covered in this like kind of gooey like ointment cream on her face. So it was really quite a disturbing image to see of your child for the first time. And, you know, of course, I'm immediately postpartum. My hormones are going wild. So it's like an up and down roller coaster. It was so strange. I had also some health concerns postpartum immediately that I had to, you know, deal with, and the fear of that. And, you know, my husband's exhausted and I'm exhausted. And then, you know, we had to start our NICU journey. So, you know, as I'm also healing physically, I'm trying to engage in this really intense medical crisis of my child. My first experience being a mom was like really, really intense. So my daughter was in the NICU for about 6 weeks, and it was relatively straightforward in terms of like how she progressed along in her development. It was really the first, I would say, about 10 days that were the rockiest, which is probably no surprise, but it was very one step forward, 2 steps back for the first week. She didn't end up getting transferred to a more intensive care unit at McMaster. So she did stay in Niagara locally, which was a blessing. This was also during the pandemic. So my husband and I weren't able to be in there at the same time. So I was really alone and isolated. My family members were not able to come alongside and kind of like take up that supportive role for me. So it was really her and I against the world. And we spent a lot of time together in that NICU, a lot of time through the incubator walls. And, you know, eventually that experience does come to an end, and she was able to come home. And that was like also such a weird experience, because here I was this whole time thinking just the day that she can come home and just waiting for that day she can be discharged from the hospital, and that's when everything's going to be okay again. And it really wasn't that way. I know I'm not alone in the feeling of, your fear is ramped right back up again when you come home, because you're used to having all of this support in the hospital and the security of the monitors. As much as we hate the monitors, we love the monitors, right? Because they're telling us our babies are okay. And if they're not, they tell us. And now it's all up to me and my mom instincts. And that's a lot of pressure when you've seen the dips on the monitors and you wouldn't have otherwise known without them. So all of these fears start going through your head over and over again. And it wasn't actually until I think it was 2 days before my daughter's discharge from the hospital that I learned about the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation. And the way that I learned about it was I was sitting in the NICU room one night and the lights were all dim, and I looked over at the counter and there was this underlighting on the counter, and it was like illuminating this little bag of goodies. And on the side of the bag, it had the Canadian Premature Babies logo and the website at the bottom of the bag. And I was like, oh, there's my people out there who know what to do. So I went on my laptop and I started Googling, and I came across the website, and it was like a whole world like opened up to me. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. There's so much resources and support out there for me. So similar to Elizabeth, I did join the Facebook peer support group, which was an invaluable resource to me. I didn't post very much at the time just because I was more of like an observer type, but I benefited so much from reading those other moms' experiences and other families' experiences that I felt so much less alone. And for me, being a more type A personality, I just wanted to get my hands on all the information that I possibly could. So I immediately went into research mode. I was learning everything about prematurity that I could, what it might look like for her now to continue growing and developing, and what I could do as her mom to facilitate like a positive development for her. So I often watched the Friday Preemie chats that Fabiana has on Facebook every week, every Friday at 1 o'clock. And I would tune in and I would ask my questions to the experts. And these are like doctors and professionals that are so knowledgeable. And so I really benefited from that. And from there, I just started having like even more of a desire to kind of get involved. So I reached out to CPBF and got in touch with Fabiana. So we know each other before today, but I started getting involved with the foundation and volunteering and helping with some like social media stuff, which is in my line of work. And through that, I think it played a role in my healing journey as well, being able to give back to the community that I'm part of and to support other parents through the journey. So that was something that was very important to me, as well as, obviously therapy is an amazing thing. And I 100% advocate for anyone to do any kind of therapy ever, but especially if you go through something as traumatic as this. So I'm so grateful to CPBF and to you, Fabiana, for all that the organization has been able to offer me. And I'm going to continue to push with this message forever and to just be there with all the other moms and all the other families that go through this. And, my family building journey is not necessarily over. So this is going to be very much part of me for a long time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Addie, for sharing. It's so nice to see how there's so many different components of CPBF. It's not just a Facebook group or a therapy session or a Facebook Live, but you can get involved in so many different ways depending on what's best for you. So let's end today with just celebrating you three for being here and being so courageous to share your stories. And I will pass it right back over to Fabiana, if that's okay, to just share about how individuals can get in touch with you, register for some programs, and sign up for services.
Wow, thank you, Andrea, and thank you so much, Addie and Elizabeth, for sharing your stories. I know how hard it is sometimes to be vulnerable and share, those journeys, but I feel that it's such a need for us to share our stories so parents do not feel that they are going through this alone. So thank you, both of you, for sharing it. And also, I'm so grateful to know that the work that we put out every day, people are actually benefiting from it. So it is the drive that I have, like, to support families. And when I hear those stories, like, okay, I can continue doing for many more years to come. So yeah, for families to get in touch with us, just go to our website, which is canadianpremies.org. All the information is there. All the forms to sign up for any program is there. If somebody wants to volunteer with us, the form is also there. So we're always looking for volunteers. Thank you, Addie, for bringing that up. And we love having not only families volunteer, but we have a lot of healthcare providers as well in our volunteer team, which they add so much to us. And I love working with families alongside with healthcare professionals, because I always feel that we can accomplish much more when you work together. So thank you so much, Andrea, for having this opportunity today. And I hope everybody follow us on social media. All our handles are Canadian Premies. Easy to find us on any channel. So, and again, thank you for giving this opportunity to share a little bit of our work and our passion, because you all work together to create this brighter future for all the families.
Absolutely. And if you're not quite ready for a program just yet, there's tons of resources and great educational tools available on the website for you to explore too. So I want to thank you for like the 100th time for all of you to share your story today. We hope that this resonated with a few of our viewers, and we hope that this helped you feel not so alone. We also want to remind everyone to go and celebrate World Prematurity Day today. So keep it going, not just today, November 17th, but always, and keep celebrating yourself on your parenting journey and anyone that you might know who might be experiencing being a premature parent for the first time or maybe for the third time. If you have any parenting questions, you can reach out to us on Niagara Parents via live chat, phone line, or Facebook message. And then to get in touch with the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation, we will have all of the links in the caption of this video.